Just give me the mic. Yes, I am. I am in effect. Absolutely, I am. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls all around the world. You know what time it is when you see me. Chill Town Hoops. We are here to talk pro basketball. The good, the bad, the indifferent. This is what we do around here. So let's get to it. Let's not waste any time, right? So I first want to give a shout out to my man Tony Tone. You know, he takes care of all of this good stuff. He's the one who has all the background stuff, all the music, all of that good stuff. He does that. So I think that that's really cool. Shout out to Player's Choice. You guys know where they are. I think that that's awesome as well. You know where to find them. Player's Choice right here on the YouTube channel. Me and my man Big Ox, we do it on Monday to Friday, 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock. You can also find me and my man Big Ox on Chill with Chill, 4 o'clock on Thursday and at 12 o'clock on Saturday. So not hard to find at all. So without further ado, let's get to it. We had some enshrinements this weekend, and with us having some enshrinement this weekend, we had some really cool people getting inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Now, I want to remind you guys that the Basketball Hall of Fame is exactly that. It's not the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. It's the Basketball Hall of Fame. Now, I do think that there should be on some level. A congregation that comes together and decides, what are you guys going to do? What are you guys going to do about getting a Pro Basketball Hall of Fame? Because we have that everywhere else. We got Pro Football Hall of Fame. We got the Baseball Hall of Fame. We got the Baseball Hall of Fame. We got the Pro Hockey Hall of Fame, right? So with that being said, we do need to get a Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. That way we can differentiate between the two. If I'm not mistaken, if I go back in history and I look, over 5,000 players have played in the NBA, right? Over 5,000 players have played in the NBA. With the 5,000 players that have played in the NBA, I think 170 of them are in the Hall of Fame. I think 172 are in the Hall of Fame. And if my math serves me correctly, that's about 3%, right? That's about 3% of the guys today who are in the Hall of Fame. 3% of the guys who have played in the NBA. That's it. That means I'm in the 97th percentile. That's pretty impressive, right? I think that's really impressive for a guy who's played for that long of a period of time. Because again, the Basketball Hall of Fame, it also deals with contributors. Contributors are guys like Adrian Wojnarowski, aka Woj, coaches. It also deals with executives. Mickey Arison got inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. I love the fact that he got inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Off the strength that we have to give kudos and flowers to these first-class organizations. We absolutely have to do that. I don't think we do that nearly as much as we should. One of the first people that I think about when I think about stuff like that, I think about Eddie DeBartolo. And the reason why I think about Eddie DeBartolo is because Eddie DeBartolo was the owner of the San Francisco 49ers in the 80s. And he put those guys in position to be as successful as possible. And not only did he put them in a position to be as successful as possible, he stayed out of the way. You tell me what I need to do, what I need to pay for to make us the most productive that we can possibly be, and I'll do it. And once he was able to put these guys in a position to be successful, they were. Every last one of them was successful. And I marvel at that when it comes to ownership. Well, fast forward to Mickey Arison, who with the Miami Heat, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but South Florida was a vacation spot. in the 80s. You came down here to vacation. You came over here to vacation. If you were from Chicago, if you were from New York, if you were from Boston, you came down to South Florida for vacation. You didn't come to South Florida to watch pro basketball. And Mickey Arison helped turn the Miami Heat, helped turn not just the Miami Heat, but helped turn Miami into a basketball city. That's very difficult to do, considering how many basketball cities there are out here, with New York, Boston, Los Angeles, Portland. Don't think because it's not a major market that it's not a basketball city. Washington D.C., that's a basketball city. Atlanta, that's a basketball city, right? And for Mickey Arison to hire Pat Riley in 1995, which was 7 years after these guys got started, and in less than 15 years, literally a little over 10 years later, they're in the NBA championship, competing for the NBA championship. With a little over 10 years, he made the Miami Heat, he made the city of Miami and the Miami Heat into a first-class organization. That's a big deal, man. That is a huge deal when you're doing something like that, because that's not easy to do. It is not. Because if you think about these other organizations like Minnesota wasn't a first-class organization for a long time. Sacramento was not a first-class organization. There are some people who still don't think Sacramento is a first-class organization. But with that being said, I think Mickey Arison did a great job in basically turning Miami into a basketball city, getting the players necessary in order for them to be competitive, trading for Alonzo Mourning, trading Glenn Rice, which was a big deal at that time. You know, trading for a franchise big in Alonzo Mourning and building around Alonzo Mourning, bagging Tim Hardaway in free agency, which, by the way, there's a lot of you that aren't aware of this, but Tim Hardaway was not a throw-in, but Gary Payton was the guy that Pat Riley was after. Gary Payton was the guy that Pat Riley wanted. And Tim Hardaway was a contingency. And with him bagging Tim Hardaway turned out to be really, really good. So, and with Tim Hardaway, with Lonzo Mourning, Vashawn Leonard being one of the best three-point shooters coming out of school and in the NBA, then bagging Dan Marley. I mean, this team was something special. They had made it within 2 years of Pat Riley becoming the general manager of the Miami Heat. They win the Eastern Conference Championship within 2 years. In 1987, in 98, they were the number one seed. Right? 1998, they were the number one seed. Then Lonzo Mourning gets sick. This team starts to rebuild. And Mickey Arison, he stayed out of the way. He let Riles do his thing. And that's what owners do. Stayed out of the way, let Riles handle it. Riles didn't handle it, and it became something special. So, I mean, I applaud owners like that. I 100% applaud owners like that. My probably biggest issue that I have is I got to listen to people tell me about Carmelo Anthony, how he might not that he's not a Hall of Famer, that is he a first ballot Hall of Famer? And if you look at Carmelo Anthony's credentials, if you look at everything that he's done in his career, right? If you look at everything that he's done in his career as a not just a pro basketball player, but as a basketball player. If you look at everything he's done, from him being a top 3 high school player in the country. And if not, in fact, in 2002, when he came out of high school, he was a year ahead of James, right? He was a year ahead of James. That's how he ended up at Syracuse. And he was, I think, the best player in the country that year. He comes out, he goes to Syracuse and takes them to the national championship. And for you guys that aren't aware of this, the 2000s, that wasn't a time when guys, especially young guys, thrived on championship teams. If you were, when I think about like the national champions back then, UConn, in addition to UConn, North Carolina, like they were loaded with guys who they were loaded with guys who had been in school for a long time. So to be a freshman on a national championship team and to also be the best player on that team was unheard of at that time. No, we did see the Fab Five take 5 freshmen to the national championship. We hadn't seen that when they did it in 1992 and in 1983. We didn't see that again before they did it, since they did it. And to have a freshman, right, and to have a freshman lead his team to the national championship and be the best player on that team during that time when the NBA was a bunch of grown-ups. Not only was the NBA a bunch of grown-ups, but college basketball was very senior-like. More guys stayed in school than they came out. Plenty of guys stayed in school. And for Carmelo Anthony to do that on that Syracuse team and take them to the national championship was nothing short of fantastic. And for you guys that don't know, he basically got pushed out of there. Jim Boeheim made him go. He didn't want to go. He was not prepared to go to the league yet. And I don't just mean emotionally. I don't just mean physically. He wasn't prepared to go yet. When he got to Syracuse, it was going to be a one and done thing, only to find out that, you know what? I kind of dig it here. This place is dope. And I could come back and we could do it again, right? I could come back and we could do it again. And Jim Boeheim was like, nah, I don't think so. It was very much like what happened with Bobby Knight and Isaiah Thomas. After Isaiah Thomas's second year in Indiana, Bob Knight basically made him go to the pros. Like, there's nothing else I can teach you here. There's nothing else that you're going to learn here that is going to make you any better. You have to, right? You have to go to the pros because there's nothing else here left for you. Well, that's basically what Jim Boeheim did. That's basically what Jim Boeheim did with Carmelo Anthony. With him being at Syracuse after that 1 year, like, yo, you got to go. There's nothing else that I can teach you. There's nothing else for you here. One, you're going to be one of the 3 players picked in the draft. You're going to go either 1, 2, or 3. You're not going. I doubt very seriously that you are on the board past number 3. I doubt that very seriously. So there's no reason for you to stick around here anymore. There's nothing else that I can specifically teach you. You've gotten everything here. And for him to go to the NBA and he basically made the playoffs for 10 years straight. That 100% happened. He showed up in the 2002, he showed up in the 03-04 season, and he was in the playoffs for 10 straight years. So for a decade, he was in the playoffs. Well, those Denver teams that they were building around him, they became something of like a backstory. Even though he did have some talent, Andre Miller, Allen Iverson, Marcus Camby, J.R. Smith, like he had some talent on those teams, 100%. Those teams weren't terrible. I mean, Marcus Camby won the Defensive Player of the Year with Carmelo Anthony. That's who he was running around with. He was running around with guys like that, right? Then he was able to get Chauncey Billups. And when we're getting Chauncey Billups, that gave them a little bit more stability than what they had in the past. But I think the thing that we disregard with Carmelo Anthony more than anything is what he was. And what was Carmelo Anthony? Carmelo Anthony was a bucket getter more than anything. Carmelo Anthony was a bucket getter / scorer. I equate bucket getter and scorer. I basically put them in the same. I put them in the same space because a bucket getter is, that's it. That's just another word for scorer. And you're a bucket getter. You're a bucket. And some people hear that and immediately think that, you got a bag and with just having a bag. That's not where I am when it comes to being a bucket getter. No, that has to, with you being a bucket getter, you having a bag, it has to lead to something. And with Carmelo Anthony, it 100% led to something. With him being who he was as a bucket getter, it was nothing short of fantastic. I can appreciate how great Kevin Durant, I can appreciate how great Kobe Bryant, Dirk Nowitzki, LeBron James, Like when I think about bucket getters, I can appreciate how great they were. But during this stretch between '09 to 13, Carmelo Anthony was arguably the best scorer in the NBA. There weren't many guys that you could scheme against, right? There weren't many guys that you could scheme against that he wasn't one of those guys that you could scheme against and you were completely and totally effective. The stuff that you tried to give him, all it did was fuel him. So if you tried to give him the mid-range, he would attack you. If you crowded him, he'd shoot right over the top of you with the mid-range. Now, he wasn't a great, right? He wasn't a great jump shooter, but his mid-range over the course of time got more and more and more respectable to the point where that was his bread and butter. And he was one of those scorers, because I want to preface I want to preface the point that a guy like Carmelo Anthony was different in the aspect that he used as little space as possible to score. And I want to preference him being exactly that. I'm not talking about him being an overall player. I'm talking about one of the main reasons why he got into the Hall of Fame is because he is a bucket getter. And how are you effective as a bucket getter? Well, one of the things that Carmelo Anthony was great at was doing a lot in a little bit of space. So if you crowded him, he had the unique ability, being 6'8", 6'9", had the unique ability to get you off of him and raise up because he was a very good athlete. If you crowded him, or if you tried to give him space, right? If you tried to give him space and you wanted to give him the jump shot, he had one of the quickest first steps known to man. With him having one of the quickest first steps known to man, let me tell you, it was almost impossible to deal with him. Now, I do understand that there are players, I do understand that there are players who, when you give them space, they'll just take what you give them. They'll do that. They'll just take what you give them and they'll be effective like that. Carmelo Anthony wasn't one of those guys. He was a guy who, if you gave him something, he took more of that. Like, back off of him, that's more space for him to get busy. That's more space for him to get closer. When he got a smaller guy on him, he took advantage of that smaller guy and just beat him up and roughed him up, which I equate that, when I talk about scoring, I equate that with some of the best scorers of all time. I can't say enough about how much of a nightmare he was one-on-one as a bucket getter. I can't say how difficult it was. And I didn't play in the NBA, but just watching him at 6'8" and guys trying to crowd him, they would sit on his right hand. And he had such a quick first step, right? He had such a quick first step, and he was so strong that he could get to the rim with the best of them. He had a one dribble pull-up that was elite. And this is a guy who averaged 26 a game for 7 straight years. Just so you guys know, Alex English did that in the 80s with the Denver Nuggets. He led the entire decade in scoring. Carmelo Anthony did that, right? So, in addition to him averaging 26 a game in Denver for 7 straight years, we got robbed of 2 years of Carmelo Anthony off the strength that this is a guy who was basically phased out, because as a bucket getter, apparently he couldn't adjust his game. What I mean when I say that is the game was moving further away from the basket. That's not really who Carmelo Anthony was. He was a mid-range guy. He could shoot the three. Be clear about that. And not only could he shoot the three, he shot the three on really good volume. But the game was moving further away from the basket. With the game moving further away from the basket, you're taking away from Carmelo what he's the most effective at. And it made him look like it made him look like he was less than, when in reality, he still was one of the most lethal scorers, right? He still was one of the most lethal scorers in the NBA. He just had gotten phased out. And I think we got robbed of 2 years of him still being that, because remember when he was in Houston, those 10 games that he played, he was averaging over 20 a game in those 10 games that he played, right? And in the process of him averaging over 20, they decided to phase him out. It wasn't until he got to Portland where you saw how effective he still was. And at that point, you know, he had a million miles on him. At that point, 2018, 2019, 2020, we're in year 17 at this point with Carmelo Anthony, right? So with being that far into the game, like the athleticism had waned. With the athleticism waning, he still was 15 to 17 a night. Still. So I would love to have seen what he looked like if I would have loved to have seen what he looked like if Damian Lillard could have got him maybe 2 years before that. Like instead of him going to Houston, instead of him being in Oklahoma City, let's put him at the small forward spot with Damian Lillard and CJ McCullough, and let's see how effective they are. I think that we see something completely different from those two guys and those three guys, completely different. We saw Carmelo Anthony at that point. Not a shell of himself. I'm not going to go that far. I don't think he was a shell of himself. What I do think, right? What I do think is that he was starting to slow down, and I do think that we got robbed those 2 years that he didn't play, and he got blackballed and pushed out of the league because the league was changing and his inability to adjust to it. He was later on able to do that, but I don't think his adjustment came as quick as it could have been. Like he could have adjusted a little bit more to it, and I think that's where we got robbed those 2 years of him. He should be a member of the 30,000 point club. He's less than 2,000 points away from the 30,000 point club. That's how good he was as a bucket getter. That's how awesome he was as a scorer. So because of that, I think that we got robbed. Now, there are other people who ended up in the Hall of Fame. You know, Dwight Howard was nothing short of fantastic. I think that we talk about Dwight Howard the way we talk about him off the strength of what the other bigs were during that time. Now, the league was changing, right? The league was changing, and with the league changing, the big man was becoming a dinosaur. And what I mean when I say the big man was becoming a dinosaur, I mean the conventional big man, Shaq, Olajuwon, David Robinson, Ewing, like guys like that, the conventional big man, Jabbar, the guy that just played on the box, he was dying and the game was changing and the big man was moving further away from the basket because of the implementation of the 7 seconds or less offense. And then Steph Curry and Klay Thompson show up. And now you have to be able to shoot the long ball, including the big guy. Not just perimeter players, including the big guy. You have to be able to shoot the basketball at the long ball line. And Dwight Howard wasn't really that. He was the next iteration of the big guy who came behind Olajuwon. Like Olajuwon retires in 2002. Dwight Howard shows up in 2004. Shaq's still running around. David Robinson retires in 2003. Shaq still running around. You know, Ewing had retired in 2000. So, you know, Dwight Howard shows up in a league where the big man is going the other way, the conventional big man, and with the conventional big man going the other way, that style of play was going the other way. And we completely leave out how dominant he was. One of the things that I've always had a problem with is how we talk about guys who are bucket getters, right? We talk about Carmelo Anthony is a prime example of that. Guys who are bucket getters and how we marvel at these guys. And how they dominate the game. Yet we never talk about how awesome a defensive player is, who also dominates the game, who also takes the game over. I watched Anthony Davis as a defensive player completely dominate a series. I watched him play the Portland Trailblazers in 2018. As a defender, he dominated that series. Completely dominated that series. I watched Dwight Howard for 5 years dominate the NBA as a defensive player. Completely dominated. People get confused. What up, Dred? People get confused with you being a dominant defensive player with you're not nearly as effective. I mean, Bill Russell, that's the main reason why they won NBA championships, because of how dominant Bill Russell was on the defensive end. He could score, and there are a lot of people who scoff at his ability to score because he shot 44%, stuff like that. He could definitely score. There were instances where in the playoffs, like I told you, he averaged 20 and 20 in the playoffs for 4 straight years. 20 and 20 in the playoffs. So he's going up against Chamberlain in the playoffs, and he's going 30 and 30, 25 and 30 against Chamberlain. He's doing that. That's going on. Meanwhile, dominating on the defensive side of the basketball. Well, Dwight Howard, when the game started to go the other way in the 2000s, one of the slowest pace eras, you have a guy who basically mans the paint in the fashion that he mans the paint. When the big man is still running around, like Tim Duncan was still in the league. Shaq was still in the league when this is going on, right? Yao Ming is still in the league when this is going on. Yao Ming is in the league. Shaq is in the league. Tim Duncan is in the league, right? Big guys are in the league, and they're still dominant. And Dwight Howard on the defensive end is completely dominating the league. Dominating it. I'm watching him in that Orlando team holding teams to under 80 points while they're scoring 100. Holding teams to under 90 points while they're scoring 100. I can make an argument that in 2011, Dwight Howard was the league MVP. What I mean when I say that is when you have a drop big in Dwight Howard, I mean that's the term. The term was called drop. The term has been called drop big. Okay, so back then it was just opening up. That's what it's called. Let me through the screen by opening up. Dropping in coverage, that was something. I don't think that that's an advanced analytic, but dropping in coverage and staying with a guy, that's not something that was new. That's always been going on. You open up in the screen, you let the guard through, and you chase him until the guard's able to get back. Now you call that drop coverage, right? That's called drop coverage today, where a big man, whomever it is that's on the screen, I open up and I let the guard through. Once I let the guard through, or I hedge and I chase that guard off that screen until my guard is able to get back. That's called drop coverage. When I open up and I stay in front of that guard until my guard can get back. That's called drop coverage. We know what hedging is. Dwight Howard was one of the best big guys in the league at that. And then when you get him in the paint, manning the paint, when you get him in the paint, when you get him in the paint, manning the paint, one of the best rim protectors that the league had seen. That includes Olajuwon. Like he was in that conversation with guys like Olajuwon, Jabbar, Mutombo. He was that kind of big. When we're talking about a guy being that good as a defender, he was that good. And there's really not much that I can say about him, right? There's really not much that I can say about him when I think about how awesome he was as a defender. Because again, we're talking about a guy in, like I said, we're talking about a guy in Dwight Howard who could score, right? We're talking about a guy in Dwight Howard who could score, who did polish up his game. He 100% did that. Polished up his game around the rim. He wasn't a great scorer, but he was good enough around the rim. He had developed a running hook. In addition to developing a running hook, he also developed a jump hook with both hands. He wasn't as good with the weak hand, but he was good with the weak hand. Revolutionized, enhanced shot blocking, where he would block your shot into the third row, but he would also adopt that from the Bill Russell tree, where he blocked your shot to keep it in bounds. One of the best defensive transition bigs that the NBA has ever seen. He was fantastic as a transition defender. 100%. When I think about transition bigs, and I think about guys who at that space getting back on defense, I'd like to think that it means a lot if you are that good defensively, you should be that good as a transition big getting back. And I think Dwight Howard was one of the best transition bigs in the game, slowing down guards, making a beeline and running right to the rim to guard the rim, because that's what bigs do. Him being able to do that, I think that that's nothing short of fantastic for a guy his size and his athletic ability and his strength. I mean, he was nothing short of fantastic. Led the league in rebounding. Not only did he lead the league in rebounding, led the league in blocks. Led the league in rebounding, led the league in blocks. That year in 2011, when I said that he could have been the league MVP, 23 and 14, right? 23 and 14 on a top 3 defense. Like they go under when Dwight Howard was off the floor. I think Orlando finished 4th that year in the Eastern Conference, which, had the Celtics in it, had the Miami Heat in it, and the Eastern Conference wasn't terrible in that year. No, it wasn't. And a guy like Dwight Howard, I think he definitely deserves to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Took his team to the NBA championship. They weren't able to get past that Laker team because I think that Bryant and Gasol, I think they were on a mission that year. I don't think anybody was beating them. I don't think that there was anybody that was getting past him. But what he did for that group, I mean, I think it's nothing short of fantastic. I feel like we don't give him enough credit. I think that an argument can be made that he's a top 10 center all time. If you look at the best centers in NBA history, so Jabbar, Chamberlain, Russell, Olajuwon, Diesel, Moses, David Robinson, Joker, Patrick Ewing, Dwight Howard, Robert Parrish. I mean, I think that he's right there. I think that he's right there. I think he was better than Bill Walton. I'm on record saying that, and I will stand on that. I think Dwight Howard was better than Bill Walton. I can appreciate Bill Walton winning the league MVP. I can appreciate Bill Walton being the league MVP. I can appreciate Bill Walton winning the NBA championship. I can definitely appreciate that. What I can't appreciate is him not doing it for the extended period of time that he did it. Like Spanish Joe said, Wemby. What has Wemby done for you to suggest that he's a top 10 center today? If Wemby's career ended today, and I'm asking a genuine question, if Wemby's career ended today, you're telling me that Wemby is a top 10 center all time? Of all of those guys that I mentioned, if Wemby's career ended today, Wemby's never playing another minute in the NBA. You're telling me that Wemby is a top 10 center all time. And this is the logic, and this right here is the kind of logic that I have such a difficult time with, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to make somebody into something that they're not yet. They're becoming that. They could very well turn into that, right? They're becoming that. Just like Wemby could one day be the defensive player of the year. He's not that yet. 100% he's getting there, though. 100% he's getting there. But I would like to hear from you guys, though. So, bro.
Yo, OG.
Bro. What's up, bro?
Yo, you can hear me? You can hear me?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I just had a quick question. You wasn't on topic or nothing like that. I just wanted to ask, who is a better scorer in your opinion, Mark Aguirre or Michael Finley?
Mark Aguirre. I think Michael Finley was more athletic, but I think Mark Aguirre, I think he got it in a number of different ways.
Word. All right. That's all I had, OG.
All right, brother. Good to talk
Appreciate
to you.
it.
I just think that I think that we turn these guys into something that we want them to be, right? I think we're turning them into something that we want them to be, but they're not yet, right? I think we're trying to make them something that I think that they're close to being, but Wemby's got a lot of work to do. I think Wemby's got a lot of work to do, and I think that at some point he will be there. But when we're talking about the best bigs of all time, Wemby's not in that conversation yet. No. I can tell you what, though. Dwight Howard 100% is. Dwight Howard is in that 8 to 11 space. I don't think that I'm not going past, when it comes to Dwight Howard, I'm not going past 11. That's as far as I'm going. Like I said, Bill Walton, Lonzo Mourning, Robert Parrish, Dwight Howard, like in that space. I think he's 10. That's why I have him at Jabbar, Chamberlain, Russell, Lajuan, Diesel. Jabbar, Chamberlain, Lajuan, Russell, Diesel, Moses Malone, David Robinson, Joker, Patrick Ewing, Dwight Howard. Those are the 10 best centers, I think. Right? Those are the 10 best centers, I think, in NBA history. So, and Dwight Howard definitely is a first ballot Hall of Famer for what he's done. What up?
What up, Chewy? You hear me?
What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Good, brother.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy that the Dwight Howard made the Hall of Fame. I think he was, in my opinion, I think he was, probably a better player than Melo, in that sense, to make the top 75 list. So I think he should have made that list, but I'm happy Dwight made it. I think people don't realize how good Dwight Howard was, like during his prime. And I also don't think people realize how big of a star Dwight Howard was after he kind of went to Houston. Obviously, his kind of like star kind of waned, and everybody kind of started looking at him funny after he went to Houston, it was Atlanta, then Charlotte. So it was kind of like everybody was like, oh, Dwight Howard's kind of become this big clown. But in his prime, Dwight Howard was a huge star. Like, he was the only one really in the NBA that could really rival LeBron James in terms of like popularity, and maybe Kobe at the time. And I think even big overseas as well, how big Dwight Howard was. Everybody knew who Dwight Howard was if you knew what basketball was. So I think
Amari, can you really quickly, Amari, can you up the year that, because I feel like I can make a compelling argument that Dwight Howard could have won the league MVP in 2011. I know that's the year that Derrick Rose won it. That year, I'm gonna throw some names out to you. Can I definitively say that Derrick Rose was a top 5 player that year? Like, definitely.
That year,
I'm gonna throw some names out to you. So I'm gonna start with James.
No.
Dirk.
No.
Dwayne Wade.
No.
Bryant.
No. Hell no.
Dwight Howard.
No.
That's 5 right there. And I feel like I'm leaving somebody out. I do.
Did you mention Duncan?
There it is right there. Tim Duncan. I knew I was leaving somebody out. But I think Duncan, I think I'm leaving somebody else out too. Yeah.
In 2011. God.
I'm leaving out somebody else too. So KD, that's what I'm leaving out.
Durant. Oh, Kevin Durant. Yeah, Kevin Durant. I mean, you could make an argument in 2011, that I think Derrick Rose was more of a narrative MVP. I'm not saying that he didn't deserve the MVP. He did lead the team to 60 wins.
Sure.
And you know what, to be fair, in back-to-back years where Derrick Rose did lead the league in wins for the East. I think people kind of forget about that in 2012, that the Chicago Bulls was the number 1 seed. And if it wasn't for Derrick Rose getting injured in the first round, they probably would have went back to the Western Conference Finals again. So the Eastern Conference Finals.
I think at minimum, I think they back in the East Finals. I do think.
And
I think they beat that Indiana team. I do.
I will say this about Derrick Rose. Don't obviously go on side tangent from the Dwight Howard, but I will say this. I feel like with Derrick Rose, I don't think there has been MVP, maybe outside of Russ, that has made their team so much better despite the offensive deficiencies that they had. Like, I don't think people understand how bad the Bulls were offensively.
That's why well, first of all, I'm thinking about that Bulls team, and I'm looking at that Orlando team. And not only am I looking at that Orlando team, I'm looking at how limited Dwight Howard was as an offensive player.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at with him. How much better he made that group. Not only how much better he made that group defensively, they actually went to him for buckets. He was 23 and 14 that year, right?
I think he went up to 27 in the playoffs, I think, as well. That's in that same play against the Celtics. Yeah, the Celtics. He put them in the Eastern Conference semis, isn't it? Yes.
Mm-hmm. So,
and he was killing them.
With that being said, he developed a jump hook. He developed a running hook, and he was able. Right, he was able to put his team. He was able to be a competent offensive player. I don't think he was an elite scorer.
Oh God,
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that in the least bit. But I think that he was good enough as a scorer to make you to make you respect him. And what I mean when I say respect him, double him, because you saw what the Cavs did. Like they with him on Varejao on him, they had to double him because Varejao couldn't deal with him one-on-one.
No.
Not only could Varejao not deal with him, Tristan Thompson couldn't deal with him one-on-one. He couldn't. Well, I'm sorry, Tristan Thompson wasn't there yet. I apologize. Zydrunas Ilgauskas couldn't deal with him one-on-one. Yeah, he couldn't deal with him one-on-one. With that being said, when in 2011, this team with him off the floor, they were at the bottom of the league defensively. You put him on the floor, they're the third best team. They're the third best team. They're the third best defensive team in the game, right? This is how he's affecting the game. One of the best shot blockers, if not the best rim protector in the league that year,
and the best rebounder as well at his position as well.
And when I think about the league MVP in 2011, I think Dwight Howard has just as good a case as James and Derrick Rose.
He probably does, to be fair. I can't remember how many wins the Orlando Magic went. I know it was over 50. I know they were like the third. I think they the fourth seed in the East, I believe, in 2011. They were the fourth seed in the East.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I think people. I think by 2011, I think people were kind of out on Dwight from that standpoint on his performance in the 2009 finals. I think I don't think they believe that Dwight Howard could elevate a championship team. And I will say this, Dwight Howard's offensive limitations are a little bit overstated. I mean, even if you look at that series against against the Trailblazers, they couldn't really do much of him then. And I think that was really the last series that he was kind of healthy for all the way through. I think the issue with Dwight was the fact that you always look for more on offense. His defense was fine. He was, again, like you said, he was one of the best drop bigs in the league, best shot blockers in the league, best rim protectors. And obviously that new word that's come around is rim deterrence. That nobody wanted to go around Dwight Howard at that rim. And you could kind of see it through all of his series. Even LeBron James was very hesitant of going around Dwight Howard throughout his series in Cleveland. He was getting to the rim.
Am I ridiculous? Am I ridiculous? Like, you know how people talk about Wemby today? That's how they were talking about Dwight Howard back then.
Oh, yeah,
that was 100% going on. Yes.
And he was one of the best lob threats as well, finishers as well. And so the White is such an underrated player, to be fair. I think, you know, I enjoyed the Dwight Howard's career. I always look for the White, even later in his career, even when he was at Charlotte. I think people forget that he had a 30 and 30 game. You know how many people have done 30 and 30? I think Kevin Love is the only other person that's done 30 and 30 in the last 10 years or so. Maybe Jokic did 30 and 30, I'm not sure. Or 20 and 30.
If I'm not mistaken. So 30 rebounds. Dennis Rodman got 30 rebounds in the game. Kevin Love got 30 rebounds in the game. A 30-30 game. Kevin Love did it. Before Kevin Love did it, if I'm not mistaken, I think Chamberlain was the last one to do it.
We see? This is what I'm saying to you.
I think Chamberlain was the last one to do that.
And
Chamberlain or Russell. Like Moses Malone, I don't think Moses Malone has a 30-30 game. No, he doesn't.
I don't think so either. And I think
Jabbar doesn't either.
Definitely not. No, Kareem definitely doesn't have a 30-30 game.
No, he does not. So,
but last point I want to make about the White before I head out. People also forget Dwight Howard wasn't that tall. Dwight Howard was only 6'10". He was only 6'10", and he's the same height as Anthony Davis. And sometimes when I saw him next to LeBron James, he looked about the same height as LeBron. And for a guy that small to be, I think people forget that he wasn't Shaq's size. He was not Shaq's size. Shaq was 7'1". And he didn't have the feet work, he didn't have the technical ability, and I think he maximized as much as his physical gifts could give him for his career. So I'm happy for the White. I didn't come at Anthony. I did quite like Carmelo.
Absolutely.
Hey Rachel, take it easy.
Good to talk to you, brother. Absolutely. I mean, guys, like I said, guys like Dwight Howard, I mean, I think they're no-brainers, to be honest with you. The issue that I have, and I still stand on this, the issue that I have is I hear a lot of times about the top 75 lists. And, you know, this guy did it without a top 75 player, when a lot of you guys invalidate the top 75 list. Like, you don't talk about George Mikan winning the NBA championship without a top 75 player. Meanwhile, you'll say that Dwight Howard isn't on the top 75 list, and you'll invalidate it, right? You'll invalidate the you'll invalidate a guy like that. So I'm trying to make sense of how that works, but again, the fact that Dwight Howard, right? The fact that Dwight Howard did what he did in the fashion that he did it, I really, you know, I really have nothing more than I really have nothing but respect for what Dwight Howard did. Nothing at all but respect for Dwight Howard. When I think about who he was as a player, because he was nothing, like I said, he was nothing short of fantastic. No doubt about that. He was nothing short of fantastic, and he deserves all the flowers that he gets. 100% he does, because same thing with Carmelo Anthony. He deserves all the flowers, all the flowers that he gets. So yes, he was nothing short of fantastic. What up?
Yo, what up, Chill?
What up, brother?
Chilling, man. I just wanted to say salute, love the content. But I wanted to ask you, first off, I'm happy for Melo. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to everybody that got to the Hall of Fame, but I'm very
Yep.
happy for Melo. He became my favorite player because of the mid-range shot. And like you said, I would just be reiterating that. But what I wanted to ask you is, from when Melo era played till now, how important is the mid-range going into this generation and going forward, in your opinion?
Well, I can tell you it's always been one of the most important shots, but because analytics have now become what it's become, advanced analytics have now made the mid-range shot the most ineffective shot in the game, because you're shooting the furthest away from the basket. Yeah, you're shooting the furthest away from the basket. In addition to you shooting the furthest away from the basket, it's only worth 2 points, but completely leaving out what it opens up. I've always thought that I've always felt like the mid-range is one of the most important shots, because it gives you so much more space. When you're able to knock down the mid-range and when you're able to knock down the mid-range and do it consistently, defenses have to honor that. And when defenses honor that, that gives more space. Whether you're in the paint, whether you're in the mid-post, defenses have to honor that. But if you're not shooting it at all, and if you're not shooting it at all, and you're shooting behind the three-point line and three-point line only, then I don't think that you're giving yourself nearly as much. I don't think you're giving yourself nearly as much space. When you start in the mid-range and then you move to the long ball line, I think that you can be so much more of an effective player if you did that. I don't buy that advanced analytics logic that the mid-range is the most ineffective shot, because if that was the case, then taking the mid-range out of the game and only playing at the long ball line and at the rim, we saw what that did with the Boston Celtics.
Yeah,
we saw what happened when you rely on that as much as you do. So when you take that mid-range out, what you're taking out is an aspect of your game that can completely make you even more effective than what you already are. So it 100% is important.
I want to add to what you said before I got on. I'm listening as well. Drop coverage. I feel like mid-range destroy drop coverage. You could not play drop coverage on a mid-range shooter.
Because guys
too
are so
dangerous.
Mid-range. Yeah, guys were so effective in the mid-range. You can't do it.
Word. But that's all I got, Chill. I just wanted to say that.
Good to talk to you, brother. You know where to find me at. What up? Yo.
Hello, Chill.
What up?
Yeah. I just what Amari said, that Dwight was better than Melo. I feel like that is a very, very good conversation that many people don't want to hear, but it's almost like, if you think about it for more than 3 seconds, is legitimately true.
Well, think about who affected the game more. Like just from that aspect alone. Like let's take Carmelo Anthony and Carmelo Anthony and Dwight Howard off the table as players, like just skill for skill, because that's what people want to talk about. Let's just talk about them and how these two guys affected the game. Who affected the game more, Dwight Howard or Carmelo Anthony?
I think this is a unanimous Dwight Howard. The gap offensively isn't as big as many people would like to think, but the gap defensively, that is as big as the Red Sea. I genuinely believe that I think Dwight Howard was not used to the best of his abilities in his prime. The way he was athletic, how athletic it was, I don't think he was used like to the best of his abilities. We could have seen a better defender in him, especially since how do I say this? The same way with Rudy in Utah and Rudy in Minnesota, I would almost unanimously say everyone would say the Rudy in Minnesota is better defensively than the Rudy in Utah. When you have a good defensive unit around you, you can do wonders. Kevin Garnett, 2008, that is like almost a prime example of. So he was out of his prime, but that's one of the greatest defensive units of all time.
He was still in his prime. I think he was still in his prime. He was. I think he was out of his peak. I don't think.
Yes, out of his peak.
I don't think that. I don't think that was peak KG. But with to your point, when you have a player to the magnitude of Dwight Howard that affects the game the way he does, now we can match the skill set. Right now, we can put the skill set on the table. Well, how is Dwight Howard affecting the game more than Carmelo Anthony? What is Carmelo Anthony doing as a bucket getter that's more impactful than what Dwight Howard is doing overall? Not just as a bucket getter, but also as a defender. What is he doing? How is he manning the paint? How is he stopping plays? How is he rim protecting or deterring shots? How is he doing that? Well, you see what he does in quote unquote drop coverage. You see how he's hedging on guards and getting back to the big guy at the same time. You see how good he is as a recovery defender. You see how guards, even on fast breaks, they don't want to go down the lane when Dwight Howard's running because Dwight Howard's going to smack that thing into the 10th row or he's going to pin it up against the glass. That affects your game. Now, Carmelo Anthony on the flip side to that, when we're talking about a bucket getter, and we're talking about a guy who just can get me buckets, because that's what I classify Carmelo Anthony as. He wasn't a distributor. He wasn't much of a defender. He could rebound the basketball and stop plays, which I'd like to think that matters. But more often than not, he was getting you buckets. That's who he was. He's the guy that we go into for buckets. And was that more prevalent and was that more significant for what Dwight Howard did overall? I don't think so.
Yeah, I very much agree with you. And it's kind of, I don't want to say this because he just got inducted to the Hall of Fame, but someone like Carmelo Anthony for me is how do I say this? Is an overstated bucket getter.
You're not the first person to say that to me. I've heard that a number of different times, and I'm trying to make sense of it. Is it because it was less difficult to guard him than KD? It was less difficult to guard him than James Harden, for instance? Is that what it is? What is it when I keep hearing this about Carmelo Anthony being a bucket getter? I mean, overstating him being a bucket getter.
What I mean by that, and by the way, they're not similar in players. Like these are not similar at all. But it's maybe a Cam Reddish that is given a team. Like I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Just a guy who wants to go at it all the time, 1v1, come at me, I'll come at you, try to defend you at least. Although he wasn't a good defender, but that's what he looks like to me. A Cam Reddish that was given reins, like here you go. A Cam Reddish without the LeBron James in his team or Anthony Davis. That's what Carmelo Anthony sees. That's what I see in Carmelo Anthony, which again is kind of disrespectful, but that's the type of player he was at the end of the day. And I think that is the last type of his archetype will die. I think he's the last type of player like that.
When you say and before you go, when you say Cam Reddish, I mean, do you think Cam Reddish was on the level of Carmelo Anthony as a bucket getter?
No, that's why I said it's kind of it's very disrespectful to say it, like, but that's the type of player he is. The type. I promise you. If
you talking about you talking about the 6'8" wing that could score, that kind of thing?
Yeah, but can't really do anything else to that level. 6'8" Cam Thomas. I don't know. That's literally what he was for me. That he's just here. Go. We can let you go. But the reason why teams with players like Melo will never succeed, and actually, I'll deter for a little bit. Well, it's interesting to me. The reason why we found bucket getters like Melo, like AI, is because of Jordan actually. So the NBA is a copycat league. They saw that if you had a good big man, you would win. Now Jordan broke that rule whereby he was the best player on his team, and it was a very defensive-minded team. So from then on, most of the 2000s, what you saw, except for Shaq and Kobe, was one good, very, very good offensive player, T-Mac, Vince Carter, so AI, so forth, and a very, very defensive-minded team. And that was the archetype, and that especially in those early 2000s, that was what was going on. That's why Shaq and Kobe, for me, they almost had to win those championships, and the only competition for them would be the Detroit Pistons, because the Detroit Pistons did not exactly follow that. One guard who was really, really good, followed by a defensive-minded team. Vince Carter, defense, was surrounded by a defensive-minded kid. AI was surrounded by a defensive-minded team. So the NBA saw what Jordan did. Is like, we tried to replicate that. But then when Shaq and Kobe got together, I think that was too much for everyone else to make up for with just one offensive guy, if you get what I mean. But Carmelo Anthony was put in that type of situation. But then when they traded for AI, they said we are going almost full in offensive with still some defensive guys in there. But for me, Carmelo Anthony is if you again, this is very disrespectful. If you put a 6'8" Cam Thomas next to Ben Wallace in them and Chauncey Billups in them, like that's what it looks like to me. But then of course, Melo is better than all of these guys I'm comparing him
yes,
to.
He is. Yes, he is.
Way better than all of these
Yes,
guys
he
I'm
is.
comparing to.
All right,
But that's
brother.
just what it looks like.
All
Sorry,
right,
Joe.
brother.
I had one more thing to say.
Yeah.
That has been itching in me. I wanted to come up on Chill with Chill, but I didn't have time. When I hear that the game has become weaker, has become worse, this really bugs me. I am a younger guy, and when I, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm not old at all. But when I go and look back and look at what people are saying about Jordan in the 90s, Dennis Rodman in the 90s, people are saying Dennis Rodman was the greatest rebounder of all time. And then Bill Russell went into an interview and was like, my friend Wilt was very, very like discouraged that people are saying he's the greatest rebounder. Well, like, what did he do? So I feel like every era gets shitted on by the people of previous eras. Am I wrong?
And it's only in pro basketball too, by the way. They don't do that in any other sport. They don't do that in football. They don't do that in baseball. They don't do that in any other sport except pro basketball. That's it. They don't do it anywhere else. They pay homage to guys before them. In pro basketball is the only one where they talk about guys from the past and they talk about them like they ain't shit. They do. They don't do that anywhere else.
Yeah. And in fact, it goes both ways. Guys from the past also come here and say, what was saying at like 65 years old, I could drop 70 today. Like, he was just casually saying that on live TV by then. That was very funny to me. That. I think it's because basketball is almost a mano sport. It's still a team sport, but it's one of the team sports where one individual can affect many things at the same time. So that competitive nature gets in the way of it. I'm a big soccer fan. That doesn't happen at all. Like, yeah, like it's almost, yeah, you just continue. But how comes this keeps on repeating, Joe? Like, everyone said,
I just think it's in basketball more than any space, because I feel like in basketball it's become more individualized as time has gone on. Like, it became more individualized in the 90s. It became more individualized in the 2000s. It became more individualized in the 2010s. Like, I feel like I feel like we're getting back. That's because we have the parity in the league. I think we're getting back to more team-oriented guys. With that being said, I feel like the guys that we have in the league today and the guys that we've had in the league over the last 10 years, the last 15 years, they focus a lot on the individual as opposed to recognizing what that individual brings to the table and to the unit, because that's what this is really about. Basketball is not a one-on-one sport. That's tennis, that's bowling, that's golf, right? I do have one-on-one tendencies, and there are times when I'm needed to carry the load as a one-on-one player, but for the most part I need these guys that are around me. And in football, we recognize that the quarterback needs the offensive line. We recognize that the running back needs the offensive line, and we praise the offensive line for that, right? In hockey, we recognize that as good a goalie as you are, you need your defenseman. And we praise guys like that in terms of goalies for recognizing what they need. In pro basketball, it's the only sport where we have to just completely and utterly recognize you being a one-on-one player and you being better than everybody else as a one-on-one player. And that's just not how basketball works. That's just not. And I think that the era that we live in, I mean, that's what it is. So, all right, brother. Good to talk to you.
Have a great day, Chill.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, man. I'm not feeling the Cam Thomas logic, a bigger Cam Thomas, but I do understand where he's coming from when he talks about he threw a name out, and I definitely I definitely can appreciate the logic of him. Right, I can definitely appreciate the logic of him recognizing Melo as a bucket getter, because that's what I recognize him as. I recognize him as a bucket getter. But what I also recognize that it wasn't empty. Like this Sorrow Alpha dude in my chat who says Carmelo Anthony is DeMar DeRozan, both garbage and stat padders. He went to the playoffs for 10 straight years. So with you saying that he was a stat padder, you're essentially telling people that it meant nothing, when in reality, yes, it did. Yes, it did. It meant a lot. So I like to talk basketball where I am, right? I don't like to talk like the fake nonsense that you guys are talking. So I like to talk actual facts, right? So yes, DeMar DeRozan did too, 100%. So I'm not just going to disregard going to the playoffs. I'm not going to do that. You can do that because that's a narrative, and you're of that generation where if you're not winning the NBA championship, you suck. That's why I can't talk basketball with you, because you don't understand what goes into actual winning basketball games and getting to that point. You have no idea what that is. But you'll come up here but I'm done addressing you. I'm good. I got a super chat from Leaf. Leaf said, chill. They should have never gave us Micah Parsons. Uh-oh. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Micah Parsons. So that's what that is. Speaking of giving y'all something, I got to give it to Heave Ho, guys, because it's about that time for me. But it was good to see you guys tonight. You know where to find me. I'm on TikTok every morning, 9 a.m. If you can't find me there, you can find me on the panel right here on YouTube on the Players Choice Network from 11 to 2. If you can't find me there, you can find me weeknights on Chilltown Hoops. You can find me on Tuesday night. Me and my man Tony Tone, we do it on both the Chilltown Hoops Network and the Sports Fluent Network. If you can't find me here, me and my man Big Ox, we do it on Thursday at 4 o'clock, and we do it on Saturday at 12 o'clock on Chill with Chill. So I'm not hard to find, guys. I will see you guys soon. Until then, put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother. When's the last time you talked to your mother? Call your mother. I will talk to you guys soon, but until then, take it light. Take it. Absolutely, man. It was good to see you guys tonight. I really enjoyed this, no doubt. This was dope, no doubt.